Hello and welcome to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia and today I'm going to do my November wrap up. I know that I said in my last video that I was going to do the second part of my December TBR with the Christmas reads, but then I realized that November had snuck up on me and was ending, so I rearranged. I decided to do the wrap up today, and then next week I will do the holiday reading. Now, that'll actually be in December, so it'll be kind of time appropriate. So, like, when did that ever stop me? I've been talking about Christmas for like 2 weeks already. But anyway, that's my plan. As you can see, I decided to try a different location today. I'm out in my living room. I thought it'd be fun to sit next to my Christmas tree, my big tree. And so we'll see how this looks. So just trying to mix it up a little, try different locations in the house. Before we start the wrap-up book discussion, I am going to do the Christmas card question. So if you're new to my channel, I started this, I don't know, a week or two ago. In each of my videos, I have this deck of Christmas conversation cards, and I just pull one randomly, throw it out there, and if you would like to participate, you can add your answer to the comments. So here are the cards. What is the first Christmas present you can remember? You know, the one that pops into my mind, I remember with the first bicycle that I got. I think I was 4 or 5, and Santa brought me this purple bicycle, and that was my first bike. And I remember my dad teaching me how to ride it out in the yard, you know, hanging onto the back, and I mean, that whole thing. So classic memory, I guess. What about you? What is the first Christmas present you can remember if you do celebrate Christmas? All right, let's talk about the books. So I was really surprised when I looked back in my reading journal to see where November started and stopped. There was a surprising amount of books in there. I didn't know I had read quite this many. And I really, some of them in there, I thought surely those were from like a month or 2 ago, but no, apparently they were all in November, and I just read up a storm without realizing it. So first off, and I'm just going in order of from the first of the month until now. So the first one that I read was Shrines of Gaiety by Kate Atkinson. I liked this a lot. If I've read, you know, if you look at the overall entire collection of Kate Atkinson books, I wouldn't say this was her #1 best book, but it was very enjoyable. It was a fun one. It's set in the 1920s, lots of 1920s nightclubs. It's about a family empire that owns the nightclubs and a detective who's trying to bring them down. So that was Shrines of Gaiety. If you like Kate Atkinson, I think that you will like it. It's very enjoyable. If you've never read Kate Atkinson, it stands alone. You could still enjoy it, but I wouldn't really start you here if you were wondering what the big deal was about Kate Atkinson. I think I'd start somewhere else. I really like the Jackson Brodie series. Some people like her standalones better, like Life After Life. I would say probably Life After Life and A God in Ruins are her finest novels, but I find the Jackson Brodie, starting with Case Histories, to be really good compulsive reading as well. So anyway, this is good. I liked it. Okay, the next one was Happening by Annie Ernaux. This was my one venture into participating in Air November, that the reading challenge that Bob the Booker put forth, and I really did enjoy it. It is a rather devastating little slim book that is very emotionally heavy. It is about it is a memoir that Annie Ernaux wrote when she was maybe about 60, but she's reflecting on the time that she was 23 and a student and became pregnant. She did not want to continue this pregnancy, but abortion was illegal at the time, and so she spent a lot of time trying to find someone who could help her. And There's a lot in this book about a misogynistic society, about the social class issues, and also just personally about the intense loneliness of having this problem and looking around and realizing that everyone else is going about their happy lives while she is just consumed by this issue that she has to solve. So I found it to be good. I will read other books by her in the future. I was glad that I took a chance and purchased this copy of Happening. Then a couple of books that I have already returned to the library. Let me consult my cheat sheet. I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. That one was the one that I wasn't sure how much I liked it at first, and then it grew on me after I finished it, which doesn't happen very often, but every now and then I find myself being vaguely unsettled by something about a book, but the more that I think about it, I realize what was happening in that book, and I appreciated it a lot more like a couple days after I finished it. But that was the story about, it's basically about a rather intense friendship between Sam and Sadie, who meet as kids at a hospital and then re-meet during college and become very successful with a hit game. And it is about gaming culture and gaming industry, and that I'm just really not interested at all. And I think if you do love gaming, you'll get a lot more out of this book. But I was there for the relationships, and that was just really, really interesting, complicated, frustrating, but ultimately I did like it. Then I read Last Call by Elon Green. This was my big adventure into nonfiction November. And this was good too. This was very good. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. It was a true crime book about a series of murders that took place in the early 90s and in the gay community. And people were picked up at these particular gay bars in New York City, and then they would be found dismembered and strewn out in various trash bins and things in, somewhere nearby. And it's about the lack of police response, slow or underwhelming police response to this issue. They realized that they had a serial killer, but they didn't spend, when it was difficult to figure out what was happening, they disbanded pretty early on, and the case was not solved for quite a long time. And the book focuses on the victims and the community, the culture of the bars, the history of gay bars as a safe space for the patrons, and how this was threatened by this interloper who came in and victimized people. It's also about just queer culture through the time period, the relationship with the police departments and the activism groups, and just, a lot of things. There's a lot of social issues going on around the time period. Then I read The Colony by Audrey Magee. And again, this is another book. I swear that The Colony and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow felt like I read it like 2 or 3 months ago somehow. I was like, that was this month? But it really was. And this was a book that was longlisted for the Booker Prize, did not make the short list, and at that time I hadn't read it yet, and a lot of people were upset. They thought maybe it would go all the way, and so I finally had my opportunity to read it, and I thought it was very, very strong, and I'm also surprised. But I did not read everything on the short list. I only read like half of them that were on the short list, so I can't really legitimately say, well, why isn't this on there and that one's on there instead, because I didn't read them all. So I can't say, oh, I would swap this for that. I've heard everyone else's opinions about what they think should have been on it and something else maybe not, and that may be true, but I didn't read them all. But I would not have been surprised if it did make it on there or if it had won. I'm not upset with how the results really turned out, but it was really good. It was really, really good. This was set during the time of the Troubles in Ireland, and it's about a summer where two people come to spend time at a remote island off the coast, and one is an English painter who wants quiet and solitude and paint the beautiful scenery, and another person who's a French linguist who has been coming for several years to do a longitudinal study about the language spoken on the island, and there's not very many people still speaking the Irish language. And he's not happy about anybody else coming in and sort of tainting, tainting the area with the sounds of English. And so it's about their agendas, their biases. They challenge one another. And the people themselves have a number of different thoughts and feelings about their lives, their futures, especially a young man who is very entranced with the painter, and he wants to leave. He doesn't want to follow his family destiny to stay on the island and be a fisherman, and discovers that he has a talent and a passion for art himself, and just all these things. And they're hearing news stories about all of the killings on the mainland, and so all of it kind of brews up in this atmosphere on this windy, rain-lashed island. So it was really good. I really did not read any clunkers this month. It's been like such a fabulous reading month. All right, the next one was a classic reread, and it was The Age of Innocence, which has no jacket, by Edith Wharton. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago, just a beautiful story set in the Gilded Age of New York. It is a sad and poignant, kind of doomed romance tale about Newland Archer, Ellen Olenska, and May Welland. The societal confines of the people and what they perceive as their options, what they choose to do, what happens when they try to step out of that box, what happens when they retreat within its safety. And it's just really a beautifully written novel. Then I moved up to 1929 on a train in Canada, and I read The Sleeping Car Porter, and I talked about this just a couple of days ago. This was also so good. The book is not particularly long, 209 pages, and this won the Gillard Prize by Suzette Mayr. I highly recommend this when you're able to get a copy, but it's a story about Baxter, a train porter in 1929 Canada, who is stuck on these 24-hour rides, sleep deprivation, claustrophobic, all of the strange, demanding, and weird passengers, and Baxter as a closeted gay man who's trying to save up money at this awful job to get into dentistry school. It's so good. And finally, there's two more. I did take The Christmas Carol with me on Thanksgiving break. Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I think that Christmas Carol is a good entry point for someone who wants to read Charles Dickens and feels intimidated by all of his hefty tomes, because it's kind of a long short story or a short novel or a novella. It's not very long, and it's pretty accessible, especially if you kind of already are familiar with the structure of the story, and Ebenezer Scrooge being visited by three ghosts that show him what his choices in life have wrought, and then he still has time to redeem himself. So it's not the most complex or challenging Dickens work, but it is kind of a classic to come back to at the holidays. And like I say, I think it's a good entry point for someone who has never read any Dickens but wants to give it a try, or maybe if you're wanting to introduce classics to somebody younger in your family, it'd be a good place to start, perhaps. And then last but maybe not least, or maybe it is least, but I have Bliss Montage by Ling, and I'm not sure what I was expecting here. I read Severance. I really liked it a lot. This was short stories. They are so weird. There's, I think, maybe 2 in the collection that are not speculative or magic realism, and then the rest of them are all strange or depart from reality in some manner. I did really like a couple of the stories because, I mean, I like that kind of thing, but I didn't love all of the stories. Some of them were just, they were so strange and kind of almost experimental that I couldn't really connect with them. But I did really like a couple of them. I don't regret reading it, and I think I will reread a couple of the stories that I really liked again. But some of them I read them and then I didn't really know what to do with it. So I'll be interested to hear from anybody else who gives this one a crack, what they thought about it. But not that I disliked it or thought it was, you know, not a good book, but out of everything that I read, this one was the one that I was just kind of like, huh. And then I guess I kind of, I thought that was the end, but actually I think there's going to be one more because I'm almost at the end of Marion Lane and the Deadly Rose, which is a second book in the series. This is by T.A. Willberg, and the first book was Marion Lane and the Midnight Murder. These are just kind of fun. They're a little fluffy. They kind of read like something that would end up being a Netflix show about people that work at a secret detective agency that's underground in London in post-World War II era, established by a lady who was a code breaker. And the thing that I am not loving about this book is that it's so much like the first book. Like, it's both times it's like there's a murder and there's something to investigate, and then it turns out that there's somebody from within threatening in the agency. So I feel like, well, we just did that plot. So I don't know that I'll continue on with this particular series because it's kind of repetitive, and the personal relationships that were set up and had some, you know, possible like romantic tensions and stuff in the first book, they have not progressed. They're like having the same issues and roadblocks in the second book. So I'm like, we're not really getting anywhere. We're kind of like doing the same thing all over again. So that's where I'm at with that. I'm almost done. I'll have some thoughts about it in Friday Reads. All right, so that was it. I don't know how I read all those books this month without realizing it. I just kind of was always reading a book, and then all of a sudden it was a whole bunch. But it was really good. I read some really excellent books this month, and nothing regrettable. A couple of them were stronger than others. What did you read this month? What was your, you know, best one of the month, or, you know, big disappointment, whatever you want to comment about? I'd love to hear it. And I will be checking in again on Friday. Please like and consider subscribing if you have not already and you enjoyed this video. And I will see you again soon.